my best educators on how I communicate are my three kids. And those of you who are parents, and I know you've got a small child at home, they will teach you um, many things about how effective and ineffective you are at communicating. And my children are a wonderful mirror and wonderful to point out candidly when I am not communicating my best.
Welcome to the Ideas on Stage podcast, your regular insight into leadership communication.
Hey JD, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andrea. It's exciting to be here.
It's exciting mainly for me, and today with you, JD, we're going to talk about all things communicating with mastery and also the ideas from your book, Communicate with Mastery. And before we get there, if you think about this topic, communication in general, let's say that someone has just clicked on this podcast. What would you like to tell them for them to stay around and listen? What will they get from this conversation from your perspective?
Many people think that people are just born communicators or not. And I don't believe that's the case. And so it is a skill, just like playing golf or riding a bike or cooking great Italian food. It's a skill that we can get better and better and better at. And I would invite listeners to hang in there because I will absolutely share some skills which will help them improve their communication, whether it's to 1 or 1,000.
Let's do this. And some of the skills and ideas and tips, you've shared them in your book, Communicate with Mastery, which I recommend. We are going to include the links in the show notes for listeners. For those who haven't read the book, what's the gist of the book? What are some of the key ideas there?
So first of all, thanks for the acknowledgement of it, and it came out February of 2020, and there was this whole book tour planned and all of these events I was speaking at, and then the world shut down about a week after my book came out. So, but it continues to serve people, and that's what I want. At the heart of it, the concept of mastery means getting better and better at something that matters. And I had to fight with my publisher. I love Wiley. They did a lot of really good stuff for me, but they wanted to call the book Communicating Masterfully. I'm like, first of all, I would never say that sentence. You don't just add an adverb to a word. And I wanted it to be with mastery because that's a distinction. And what that means is you're never going to get it perfect. This is not going to be a perfect interview. You're not going to send a perfect email when we get off of being on Zoom. But if each time we communicate, we commit to making it better than the last time, and then the next time we can stand on the shoulders of that, that's what I mean by communicating with mastery. And so whether it's a novice speaker, somebody on their first job, or somebody just coming out of college or graduate school, or a very seasoned speaker, all of us can get better if we just set short-term incremental goals.
I love this concept of the aim should not be perfection. There's no such thing as a perfect way of communicating or ideas. There are better ways and worse ways. I remember, JD, in preparation for this conversation, I watched, in addition to reading your book, but I also watched some videos on YouTube. And there's a lecture that I think you gave where or maybe it was in your book, I don't remember now, but you talk about the concept of an asymptote when you think about communicating with mastery, which I loved. I studied economics at university, which also included math. Math was very important, which I always liked. So again, I found that an interesting analogy or way of describing this idea of the aim should not be perfection. Again, for those who are not familiar with this, with what I'm talking about, can you tell us more about this idea of the asymptote?
Absolutely. And for those who are seeing us on YouTube, this will be visual. For those who aren't, I can explain it. But if you just imagine a straight line and an asymptote, if we haven't caused you to go through PTSD from trying to remember economics or geometry, an asymptote is a curve that gets closer and closer and closer to that line. But even if these lines went up into infinity, up through the ceiling and up into the sky, that curve would never actually touch the line. It just gets closer and closer to it. And that's the way it is with mastery. We know what excellence is, we know what perfection looks like, but that's a illusion that we're going to deliver that way. We just want to each time get closer and closer to it. So let's make this very practical. Working with a speaker, that eye contact was one of the things she really struggled with. She just kind of looked straight out at but never to the people on the far right, never to the people on the far left, never to the people up in the balcony or at the back of the lecture hall. And all I wanted her to do is each time widen that aperture and connect with a part of the room or a person in the room that she hadn't before. And we worked on this throughout a semester. It was an instructor here at Stanford, and throughout the semester. And by the end of the semester, she was taking in the whole room. But we didn't start with taking the whole room. We're just like widen it a little bit. That's what we mean by mastery, just getting a little bit better than the time before. Take some ground, acknowledge that, and then set a new goal. For her, it was more and more eye contact. For somebody else, it might be start with eye contact, then work on stronger delivery, then work on moving out from behind the podium instead of standing behind it. Each speaker has a different set of goals that they would work on. Or writer, this applies to written communication as well.
Yeah, because in your book you talk about speaking communication. I think when I think about communication, JD, for me it's mainly about public speaking, presenting, but you do talk about writing as well. Of course, that's a very important part of communication. And it's great that you gave us an example already. So the in these conversations, the more examples we can bring, the better. And talking about examples, now you often talk about the power of communication in inspiring action. So if you think about action, so it's not just effective communication is not important just because we want to share some information. It's because thanks to a more effective way of communicating our ideas, we can inspire action. And so can you, I mean, you don't have to, but just in case something comes up, if not, we can cut this segment. It's okay. So can you think of a story or an example, an anecdote where effective communication had a big impact, either on you personally, or if you think about your clients, if you think about your students, anything that comes to mind by any chance?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm thinking of another person that I'm working with as an individual coach who is a data scientist, and he does remarkable data analytics for the department that he works in. And his supervisor invited me in with his agreement. Like, you can't coach the unwilling. So, he had to be a part of this decision. And she said his PowerPoints are clear, and there's a lot of data on them, and he understands the data, but he doesn't tell a story with it. And so he and I worked with just looking at his slides and beginning to imagine what a data story would look like instead of a data dump. And we just did a couple of quick corrections. The first thing we did is we looked at his headlines on the slide. And for the most part, they just said, overview or financials or enrollment. And I said, well, what about enrollment? What about financials? And he just crafted short 4 or 5 word headlines. He just added a few words to the top of the slide. And then where he was comparing data like profitability over time, I said, just put the X and Y axis on the first slide and then tell us what you're measuring and then drop the data in. One simple animation. Actually, I think all he did is he put a white box on it and animated the box flying out. Those two simple changes, having a clear headline and explaining what he was looking at before he gave people the data, immediately changed the conversations that happened in the meetings where he was delivering data. Now, there's more that we can do, but just that first start of beginning to realize he wasn't there to just inform them of the data, but to tell a story about the data so that they could make a decision, so that they could change policy, they could add courses or eliminate courses. And that's just one example that comes top of mind when you think about communicating to make an impact. We, for the most part in business, do not communicate simply to inform. There is some reason behind why we're sharing that information. And if we own that as a speaker and as a leader, we will both serve our audiences better, serve our meetings better, but we'll get more stuff done.
You mentioned data story, and you made me think of, I just want to mention these again for our listeners. A great resource there, great book is Data Story by Nancy Duarte, which I assume you know. I don't know if you know her personally, but
I do, yeah.
yeah, you do. So Data Story by Nancy Duarte. It's a great book on data storytelling, and something connected to what you said. It's never the data itself. It's never the piece of information itself. It's the story behind the data. It's the message behind the data. And also you made me think about something else that you talk about, and I agree with you. So for example, you said the headline instead of overview. Okay, again, what's the story of that overview? What's the message behind that overview? And so this is connected to the idea that often projects or ideas fail not because of the idea itself, not because of the project itself, but they fail in the articulation of that project or that idea. That's one of the ideas that you talk about. Would you shall we explore this in a little bit more detail? It's not the idea or project or vision that's wrong or ineffective. That those things fail because of how we articulate those things.
Exactly right, Andrea. For the most part, I mean, there can be ideas that fail because they were just bad ideas. Okay, so I'm right outside Silicon Valley in Marin County, and the landscape is littered with some bad ideas that should never have become companies. But assuming that it's a good idea, the other reason that it fails is because the leader or the founder wasn't able to communicate it in a way that allowed people to get behind it and want to further it. And so the I think you need the pairing of both a good idea and clear communication about the idea that is inspiring and enrolling and that people want to be a part of it. People want to enable it to go further.
And that's the point, because of course the idea has to make sense, but the thing is that if you have a great idea, not always, but often that's not enough.
Yeah,
You can have
yeah.
the greatest idea in the world, but if you can't communicate it effectively, then often that doesn't matter. And okay, and now I'm curious, JD, you offer a lot in your work, in your book, in your videos. You offer a lot of insights and tips and pieces of advice on all things communication skills. Out of curiosity, over the years, what was the best piece of advice that you've received about
Hmm.
communication?
I like that question because it makes me reflect over a longer period of time than just, what's happened in the last week or two. No, I think the best advice that I received was early in my teaching career. A more senior instructor was observing me and giving me feedback about my teaching style, and her advice to me was, "It's not about you, it's about them." And she was pointing to, I had told a story in class that was a funny story. It was an interesting story, but it didn't actually have a lesson that was applicable to the students who were in the class. She said it was a delightful story. It was 2 or 3 minutes. It wasn't wasted time. But what if you would have told a story that had a lesson or had an action that your class could take on? And the way she phrased it, it's not about you, it's about them. Still to this day, I'm in meetings and I think of something, I'm like, is this going to serve everybody in the meeting? Or is this about JD wanting to hear his own voice, or JD wanting to tell you, how I, got to meet Nelson Mandela? Well, it's all about me, and it's not really about the conversation in the moment. And so I hold back, and I try to share, both as a leader and a participant in meetings and in talks or sessions I deliver, to be sure that what I'm sharing serves the audience who's there to be taught or to be inspired or to be educated. And that's probably the best advice I've ever received, and it's so applicable in so many settings for me.
Yeah, it's a universal principle in communication. And so if we share something which doesn't serve that particular audience, we can say that that's a mistake in communication. What else? Can you think of other common mistakes that you see, again, from your
Yeah.
clients, from your students in general, when it comes to communicating our ideas?
Yes, I can think of several that are really good here. I'm just going to push back for a moment on your last comment. I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but it's a missed opportunity. You told a story that entertained and people laughed, they enjoyed it, but it could have been more if you would have framed it differently. But the other situation I often find is people who understand something at a very sophisticated level. They may be a physician or researcher who has created a medical breakthrough, or a startup founder who has a remarkable technical innovation in terms of how hardware or software or coding is being used. And the mistake that will often be made by somebody who's a subject matter expert is they explain it at the level they would understand it and they would enjoy hearing about it, but they don't think about making it accessible to other people. Now, I'm real quick to say this isn't about dumbing down an innovation or a breakthrough or a research finding. It's not about dumbing it down, but it's about delivering it at a level that's accessible to other people. And the two easiest ways to do that, because again, we promised people at the beginning we would be very skills-based today in this conversation. One is to use an analogy, and the other is to use a story. So if I can explain a breakthrough and then tell a story about how that was used by one of my clients or one of my patients, or if I can explain a new product or venture that I want to start and use an analogy to relate it to something you already understand, I make it accessible. And then I can go into greater depth. I can go into more complexity, but I want to be sure people are with me as I do that and I haven't lost them in the process.
Simplifying our communication, I would add another, let me know what you think, JD, another way to do that, in addition to stories, analogies, is to simply use simpler language. So simple words, simple sentences, simple language in general. And again, I agree with you 100%. It's not about
Absolutely.
oversimplifying things, It's about finding and using language that everyone in your audience, of course, again, it's, as you said, it's about them. It very much depends on who the audience is, but it's about finding and using language that everyone can understand. And often that is simple language.
Exactly, exactly. And the best way to get there, completely agree with you, Andrea, is to test out some of that language with likely audience members. So I'll do a focus group of a talk before I actually deliver the talk, and I'll have people respond to the way I titled things or the language that I use to describe, to make sure I've chosen a language that's appropriate. And sometimes I really do have to use a very specific, complicated term, but as I use it, I can explain what I mean by that, so that as I use it throughout the rest of the talk, people are with me and understand it rather than feeling lost by it. One of my high school teachers, Linda Brown, who was a high school journalism and Latin teacher, and I remember her talking about it's okay to write or speak just over the heads of your audience. It's okay to make them reach a little bit to understand and follow what you're saying, but you don't want to have it completely over their head that they have no chance at it. And so you bring your audience along by just going a bit above where their level is, and then give them a way that they can reach up and access that.
And I think the key is to also give them that way for them to be able to get to their level of understanding. And now in your book, you go through a framework that you call the AIM framework, which stands for audience, intent, and message. Again, for those who haven't read the book, can we talk about that?
Oh, you bet. I could talk about AIM all day. It is a framework that I learned when I was an MBA student at NYU. When I began on the faculty, it was in the teaching materials for the classes that I taught, and I have used it in almost everything I've done since then. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a twist on it, because even how it's printed in the book, I teach it even different now, and I'll send you a link you can provide to your viewers, and listeners. But if you think of a triangle, at the base of the triangle is the A and the I. Who is my audience? What do I know about them? What inspires them? What motivates them? What annoys them? What's the language that they use? What is going to inspire them to act? What is going to block them from taking an action? And then, what is my intent? And intent is a very clear choice. It isn't what is it that I want for myself? It's what do I want the audience to think or say, or more importantly, do as a result of this communication. And I need to clarify who's in the audience and what's the action that I want them to take before I ever get to the top of the triangle and start working on the message. Now, at the top of the triangle, when I am developing the message, that's where I decide, is there a story? Is there an analogy? Will I use slides or not use slides? Will there be a handout? What's the channel in which I'm going to communicate this? Is this an email that I send, or a white paper that I publish, or a TED Talk that I deliver? But I can't be up in the realm of what's the message and how am I going to structure and deliver it until I'm clear on the audience and the intent. Now, this model was developed by Lynn Russell, who at the time was at Columbia's Business School, Mary Munter, who at the time was at the Tuck School at Dartmouth, and they included it in a book they wrote in the 90s called Guide to Presentations. And I know both of them, and I've licensed it to use it in my own book. But I think it's not just for presentations. It's for anything that you're going to communicate. And the one addition that I have made to it is, you again think of the audience intent with message at the top. If you just draw a little squiggly line below the top of that, you realize that it is an iceberg. We know the analogy of an iceberg. Only 10% theoretically is above the surface. 90% is invisible. It's below the water surface. The work that we do, researching the audience, declaring our intent, the slides we create that don't make it in the show, the email that we write that we leave in our draft folder and don't hit send, all of that is below the surface. So what we ultimately deliver is a very targeted, very clear communication that causes this audience to take the action that we want them to take. And I did this slight addition to their model and taught about it for a while, and then I wrote about it, which I'll send you the link to it. And I heard back from Lynn Russell that she was pleased with my extension of her model. And but anytime you can do this on the back of a napkin, anytime you've got something to communicate, what's my aim? Sketch it out before you try to speak it or write it.
Before we continue with this episode, I just want to share a few resources that I think will be super useful for you. The first one is check out either my book, Confident Presenter, or my colleague Phil Wakenall's book, Business Presentation Revolution, or both. These are books for business owners and leaders who want to take their presentation skills to a higher level. To make the most of the books, take the Confident Presenter Scorecard, which is an online tool that allows you to assess your presentation skills for free in less than 3 minutes. And then also, at the moment, I'm running a series of free presentation skills web classes, and I'd love to see you there. The links are in the show notes. Now, let's go back to the episode. One of the things I like about you, JD, your work, and the ideas that you share is that, especially when we talk about presenting, public speaking, many people, when they hear the word presentation, either they just start thinking about PowerPoint or it could be any other presentation tool, it doesn't make any difference, or when they want to improve their presentation skills, they often start thinking about their delivery skills. So for example, at the beginning of this conversation, you talked about eye contact. It could be body language, posture, so delivery skills. But I think that, of course, delivery skills are super important, but it's not the only thing. We also need to have a very good understanding of who the audience is, what's the intent, what's the message. And to me, that kind of preparation is even more important than how good you are from a delivery perspective.
I think you're right. I think that without a strategy, and AIM is a way to create a strategy for your communication. Without a strategy, you will likely be less effective. And we can all think of people who we love to hear when they talk. They could read the phone book and we would be, delighted to be able to listen to them. But is there a there? Is there something that's actually been delivered in that regard? And we can think of people who have a great message, and if they could deliver it in a way that made it a little more accessible, it would even reach further. So I think both are important, and I've not said this before, but Andrea, I think you're right. If I had to choose one or the other, I would focus on the quality of the message and let the delivery skills be secondary to help support the message.
I also see it that way. And okay, now let's say that somebody listening, so think about business leaders, they want to regularly refine and improve their communication skills. In addition to what you shared with us already, are there any other practical tips or habits or practices that we should consider? Again, especially for those who want to constantly refine their communication skills. Anything to think about, to consider?
I have an immediate answer for you. And to the podcast listeners, do not shut me off when you hear my answer, because it's difficult. The best way to build your skills and ability is right at your fingertips. That's simply to make a recording and review and analyze the recording. Athletes do it. Golfers watch videos. College and professional sports athletes, in basketball and football and baseball, they all watch videos and they look at their technique. They learn from the game tapes from last Saturday, and speakers need to be able to do the same thing. And it is hard. I do this for a living, and 2 or 3 times a year, I will sit down with one of my videos and a coach that I respect and get feedback. Or I'll do a self-analysis and look at, have I built mastery in the areas that I wanted to work on? And what's next? What is it that I need to focus on? And it's painful because we don't like the sound of our voice outside of our head, and many of us don't like how we look. Put on weight during COVID. I've lost hair as a parent, and all of that is really visible to me on the camera. So I have to watch the video 2 or 3 times in order to get to where there's value from it. The first time through, many of us just cringe. But then the second time through, I encourage people, turn the sound off and just watch your body language and see, are there patterns, are there habits that are getting in the way? Are there things you're doing with your body that are effective? And then reverse it. Turn off the monitor and just listen to your voice. Listen for the ums and uhs, you knows and likes. Listen to how fast you're speaking, or do you have a level of gravitas? You slow down, make sure that your point got heard. And then one last time, watch for what you did well. And if leaders can get in the habit of listening and watching themselves on video, that is the most challenging personally, but the easiest way to begin building the skill of mastering. I'm working with a client right now that all of the video that I had of her, she was seated. Primarily, it had been press conferences and fireside chats and all these sorts. I said, have you ever stood? Have you ever stood up and delivered a talk? And she had one from 3 or 4 years ago, and she sent me the video, and it gave me such a rich insight into how to help her speak more effectively and to build the skill of not just doing seated presentations, but doing standing presentations and really owning the room a bit.
A couple of thoughts. One is, I think that one of the reasons why, for example, watching yourself, watching the recording is so useful is because it gives you awareness, which is the first step if we want to improve, at least in this area. So first of all, we need to be aware of what's going on, or what may need to be changed, or where we need to work on. And of course, you can become aware by working with someone like you, by working with a presentation coach, with an expert in this area. But you can also, in some way, become aware of what may need to be changed simply by watching yourself. And you're right, today it's very easy to do that. Also, you said that you do that yourself for your own communication. And if I understood well, you do that a few times a year with a coach that you respect. And that's, to me, that's obvious, but I guess it's not obvious for everyone that even someone like you, with your level of expertise and skills from a communication perspective, seeks advice and feedback from a coach.
And the parallel, I completely agree with you, Andrea. We got to find something we disagree with so that we can have a bit of a debate in this podcast today, but we are very aligned. The analogy that I often give to people, and they get it, as I say, look at sports and how many coaches are involved in sports. At the little league level, there may be 1 or 2 parents and 30 kids on the soccer team, and all they're doing is just, wrangling cats, okay? And then you go to the high school level, and there might be, a head coach and 2 or 3 assistants for a team of 20. And then college, there will be greater specialization. You get to the Olympics or professional sports, there may be, 6 coaches for one individual cyclist or one individual gymnast. One of my USC students right now is competing in the Paris Olympics in gymnastics, and she has a team of coaches that are all looking at different aspects of her performance. Well, if that makes sense for coaching in athletics, why don't we look at coaching in the same way as a business leader? Many times business leaders get less and less information candid information, the higher they climb up in the organization. And it really is the C-suite or the person who is headed to the C-suite who could benefit the most from a candid eye on their communication. And yet where the resources often get deployed, not completely, but often get deployed, are entry level or analyst class, associate class, and the training resources dwindle as somebody climbs up in the organization. And that's where often they need the support the most.
Because there's always room for improvement. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter where you are, where we are, on any skill, that there's always room for improvement. And looking ahead, if you think about the future of communication, do you see any emerging trends that we should pay attention to?
Well, first of all, I think we get credit for going almost 40 minutes in this conversation without mentioning AI. I was at a conference the other day, and one of the speakers said, we've statistically analyzed using AI, and the phrase AI comes up about every seventh word at this conference. But I do think AI is going to change the way we communicate. I'm not fearful of it. I haven't embraced it fully, mostly because I'm just happy with the way things are going right now. But I think that we have to recognize that AI is going to be in our workplaces, in our classrooms, and it needs to be a tool that we learn how to integrate and manage. From a communication point of view, I think we really need to be teaching and learning what are the prompts that allow me to use AI effectively to benefit my communication. I don't believe AI now or in the future will be a great writing tool for us, but I think it can be an awesome outlining, research, drafting tool for us. And so being able to use it, and then the hardest part is just getting started. So have it do draft one and give me a crappy first draft, but give me the first draft, and then I can put my own stories, my own personality, my own flourishes into it. So I think we have to be able to learn how to use it, where to use it, and then where not to use it, where it's not going to be an effective tool for us to communicate. But I think that's probably the biggest trend right now that we're seeing. And I think we've just scratched the surface of what's going to happen and what's possible there.
I use AI every day for a business. So not just from a communication perspective, but for the business in general, but also in communication with my own communication with the clients. Now, you mentioned the word prompt. So for those who are not yet familiar with artificial intelligence and what's possible, those tools, because I think that that's important. Uh, can you explain what does that mean? Because you mentioned, okay, what are some of the prompts that we can use to make our communication more effective? Tell us more about prompts.
Absolutely. So the prompt is the instruction or the question or the query I put to AI, and the quality of a result I'm going to get from AI is really drawn from the quality of the question that I asked, and the information that I requested it, and to be able to use AI as a conversation when it gives me that first set of results, to then give it feedback and say, what I really need is more detail on this, or is there a client story from one of our competitors that demonstrates this? And so being able to teach your AI engine and learn from your AI engine, that it becomes a richer conversation with the technology, so that what you ultimately get out of it is a better product that you can then share with clients or customers or employees.
I'd like to go back to your book, and maybe you answered already the question at the very beginning, but I want to give you another opportunity in case there is something else really important that you want to mention as part of it. What's one message that you hope your readers, the readers of your book, take away from it?
Effective communication is available to all of us. It's not something that certain leaders are born with or certain individuals have inherited from their upbringing or from the schools that they went to. Effective communication is available to all of us. And to achieve that, you've got to put some focus on how you're going to build your own writing and your own speaking. When I originally created the idea for the book, it was during the time that I was the full-time faculty member at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, where I created the communication curriculum that they continue to teach and use to this day, even after I left. But my thought was, wow, only 400 students a year get into Stanford's business school, and we teach them some great lessons about communication. But what about everybody else? Could I write a book that would make those lessons available to those who go to other business schools or never get an MBA or never pursue graduate education? And so the piece I want to leave people with is that you can communicate effectively, and there are specific tools, frameworks, and tactics that will let you get there. And that's the goal of being able to put the book out there for the world.
JD, as we approach the final part of our conversation, I'd like to ask you something about something which has nothing to do with what we talked about so far, but I think it's super important, maybe even more important. But if you don't feel like talking about it today, just let me know, and we don't have to talk about it. But I watched your TEDx talk where you talk about, so that I think the title, if I wrote it down well here, Break the Silence for Suicide Survivors. Would you be open to sharing a few ideas on this topic?
Absolutely. I'm happy to share about it, happy to answer questions. And it is the point of the talk is that we need to break the taboo and make it more comfortable to talk about mental health. And so I'm happy to answer what I can or share what I can from my journey.
Yeah, why that talk? What happened there?
Sure.
Why do we need to break the silence there?
So I am blessed to be here, Andrea. I am at this recording, almost a 21-year survivor of a very serious suicide attempt. I am one of the few people who has lived after a jump in New York from the Manhattan Bridge. And it's a miracle that I survived the fall, that I was rescued, that I was taken to good health care, and that I was able to rebuild both physically, emotionally, spiritually after that attempt. And I found at the time that there were not a lot of resources out there for suicide attempt survivors. There is a lot out there for people who've lost someone to suicide. And there's more and more for people who have attempted and are seeking ways to put their life back together. But I did the TED Talk in 2011 to simply inspire the conversation and inspire more people to be vulnerable and share their journey, and to create resources that allowed people who had made an attempt on their life, as I had, to begin to share resources and find community inside of the where they're at. Many times when somebody goes through something dreadful or traumatic like that, we don't know what to say, and so we say nothing, and that further isolates the person who was struggling. And so being okay that I share with people that this is a struggle I have had, and making a safe space for people to share with me their struggles, whether it's depression and suicide and addiction or something else. Once we are able to voice it and name it and share it, we often are then able to dissipate it or create a solution or create a different way to be. So that was my goal in doing the talk. And I share in my book, I did the talk. There's maybe 200 or 300 people in the audience at that TED event. And then I wasn't sure I wanted the talk to go up online. I was up for reappointment at Stanford. Like, what will the world think of me if this is out there? And Chris Anderson from TED gave me time. I said, I need to think about this. And I took 2 or 3 months to make a decision to let them put it online. And during that period of time, I lost one more high school friend, somebody I'd gone to school, 1st through 12th grade with, to suicide. And I was like, if the whole point is to break the taboo and break the silence, and Ted's willing to put this up, I should let them. And since that time, not weekly, but certainly every month or so, I hear from someone who has seen the talk that made a difference for them or for a family member. It was used in a class, it was used in a workshop. I am just delighted that it is out there and that it enables people to know that it doesn't have to be the end of the road. It can actually, as it was for me, be a new beginning.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing these. And I don't know the statistics, but maybe, I mean, I guess most likely you will know this better than me, but maybe suicide and suicide attempts are not as rare as we may think. Now, for example, I'm just talking about my own experience. A few years ago, I lost a colleague, and last year I lost a friend because of that. But anyway, thanks again for sharing that. And going back, and then we do close the conversation, but going back to the main theme of our conversation, communicating with mastery. Beyond your own book, are there any other books that you would recommend for listeners?
Yes, there are. I'm delighted with the number of books that have come out in the last few years that are helpful and useful in this conversation. I was looking to my right to see if I had it right in front of me. Think Faster, Talk Smarter by Matt Abrahams, who's one of my colleagues at Stanford. Wonderful book, came out in 2024 around the frameworks and systems we can use for impromptu communication when we don't have a prepared manuscript or outline or speech that we're delivering from. And I think his book is phenomenal and again very tactical. A lot of really great, incredible information.
And
The other
before,
one that
JD,
I have
sorry,
just started.
sorry,
Oh,
JD,
go ahead.
before you share others, again for our listeners, there's an episode on this podcast with Matt. So I
Oh,
interviewed
great.
Matt when was it? A few months ago. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sorry to cut you off.
I think Matt's work is great and really super. The other one I've just started reading halfway through, Super Communicators by Charles Duhigg. I think it is also really good about defining what's the purpose of a communication? Is it emotional? Is it process oriented? Is there something I need to accomplish here? Is it about feelings? Is it about the product? Or is it about the process, the way in which we're doing our work? And so I think that's another one that I'm delighted to finish and begin to use with my clients. Those are the two that are top of mind for me today, Andrea.
Okay, perfect. And if anyone wants to connect with you and say hi, where should they go?
The easiest way to stay in touch is just go to my website, JD Schramm, SCHRAMM.com. I have on there a Let's Connect page that will let us be in touch by email. And I also do a free newsletter every 2 to 3 weeks. It's not something that I sell, I don't charge for, and I don't sell names for people who subscribe to it. But I try within my coaching practice and my public speaking and the work that I do with companies to capture lessons of what's going on and to put them out in a short 800-word, 1,000-word newsletter every few weeks. And so I'd love to have any of your viewers or listeners subscribe to the newsletter. Let me know you heard about it here on this podcast. And if I can be of help individually or helping you find and point you to the right resource, feel free to reach out. I'm glad to do what I can to support people in building their skills as communicators.
Likewise, perfect. So we're going to include all the links in the show notes. And JD, is there a question I didn't ask? So if you think about, we talked about many things. Is there something that you hoped I would have asked you, but I haven't done it? Have we again, if we think about communicating with mastery, have we missed something important?
I think in terms of the topic, you have covered it beautifully, Andre. I think you have captured everything. I guess the one piece that I didn't share, I think my best educators on how I communicate are my 3 kids. And those of you who are parents, and I know you've got a small child at home, that they will teach you um, many things about how effective and ineffective you are at communicating. And my children are a wonderful mirror and wonderful to point out candidly when I am not communicating my best. And I think as a teacher and an instructor and a speaker, my skills have just gotten better with the 3 kids that I've had the privilege of raising. And so that's one thing we didn't talk about, but boy, that's a place that I've learned a lot of insights.
I'm curious now, if you don't mind. Let's close with this. Can you tell me a little bit more about like, what you have in mind in terms of like learning from your kids from a communication perspective?
Yes. Um, it often is a struggle to get all of us up out of the house and onto our day at the beginning of each morning. And getting my 8-year-old daughter and my 5-year-old son dressed is much harder than it should be. And I had a conversation with my daughter the other day where I was trying to move her along. I was trying to, we got a deadline to meet here. And she responded, "You are not giving me any choice right now." I was like, "Oh my gosh, Roma, you're absolutely right. Let's figure out a way that I can give you some choice and we can still be on time." But the way that she at 8 years old was able to just say, "You're forcing me, you're not giving me any choice right now. Let me change my style and let us find a much more collaborative way to get out the door rather than me forcing my will," which by the time I do that, she leaves upset, I leave upset. We may be on time, but we're certainly not in a good mood. And so I could shift my communication style, and it was all out of the mouths of babes.
I can relate to that 100%. As you
Uh,
mentioned, I have a 20-month-old at the time of recording, and yeah, it's not it's not easy at all. And there are many challenges from a communication perspective. So yeah, totally relate to that. JD, thank you very much for sharing your ideas and for your time and for your practical insights and piece of advice. Let's keep in touch. All the very best. Keep up the work that you're doing, the great work you're doing, and speak soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for this chance, and thank you for the gifts you provide to all of your listeners and viewers. It's a great podcast, and I'm honored to be a part of it. Thanks so much.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Ideas on Stage podcast, there are many more you might like, so please subscribe, leave us a review, and tell us what you think. You can find many more ideas on business communication at ideasonstage.com or by searching for Ideas on Stage on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and goodbye for now.